What is up, y'all? Welcome back to the good old channel where we are doing some mini truck stuff today. So last video we had posted, we had done the water pump, timing belt, one of the serpentine belts. We didn't get both of them, but the other one was already fairly new. Did a thermostat, full oil change, pretty much a full roundabout service, which is pretty much the best option when you buy these things used. You really don't know their maintenance and service record when you import them. If you've gotten them locally, you're just really going off of the person's word. For me, every time I buy something, I always want to go through the fluids, whether it's the differential, transmission, engine oil, from front bumper to back, and make sure all the fluids are exchanged for new. Make a mental note, or I like to write them on my dry erase board inside my shop. That way I know every vehicle has been done at this certain time. It's nice to know everything's in good shape. You don't have to worry about what ifs, right? So that being said, today we are chasing an oil leak that I thought we had solved with the valve cover gasket on the last video. So I'll bring you guys down here to show you what we're working with. I might have to turn this fan off because it's pretty obnoxious, but it does the job. So if we climb down underneath here, we can see on the bottom side of the distributor that we've got a little bit of an oil leak. So if we check it out here, what am I doing here? Okay. So we can already see it's kind of damp begin with, where it seals on the block right there. So I've pulled this off once before and just kind of got an O-ring to fit, but I really don't think it did too much slowing down on what we had here. So if we look, we've got an oil drip right there, but I think that's because of it being blown all over the place. Nope, so that looks like a valve cover issue. So we may have to cinch that down a little bit. That bolt may not be super tight. So if we go over here, we can see that that is the bottom of the distributor, and that our gap right here is pretty damp. So moving up, the valve cover does look a little wet. We can cinch that down. Our main problem is definitely this distributor. So we're gonna get this tightened up on the valve cover, and we're gonna get the distributor pulled. All we've got is I believe those are 13 millimeter, 13 or 14. We're gonna get those pulled out, and we're gonna pull it straight out. What I am gonna do is I'm gonna put a mark on the top of the block there. That way I know, right, actually, if we look, I think I put a mark right here before. Yeah, I did a little bit. So this is slotted so you can advance the timing or backtrack it, which would retard the timing. So we're gonna make sure we get this put right back where it needs to be. So with further ado, we are gonna get jumped right into this project. So we're gonna start by pulling off our plug wires. So went ahead and popped number 3 and 2 off. I just needed a little bit of leverage to get number 1 off. And then we've got the coil wire, which is gonna be on the front side of this. And then we've got a vacuum line, which is right here, that we're gonna need to pop off, which I believe, no, this one's okay. So this one was in okay shape. Our other one on the other side had to be replaced at some point. So and just try not to pry too hard on them, because they're really could be dry rotted. You don't want to be breaking all kinds of stuff. Which irony on this one is there we go. Hasn't been too long that I had those off, but they still fight you coming off every time. So then we've just got our coil wire, which should pop right off like so. And we'll set this aside just like that. So all we're going to be left with is our 2 bolts from the bottom side, and then actually we've got a vacuum line right here, which is for the vacuum advance. So that looks like it's going to be easier to pull off right here than it is down below. So we'll go ahead and pop that off. Maybe I say that. Maybe not. We might have better luck popping it off right here. Yeah, okay. So I just popped it off. Underneath here there's a rail. So we just pop that off. So we're gonna get on the bottom side and go ahead and pull these bolts out, as well as tightening up our valve cover gasket while we're down there. All right, so they're 12 millimeters right here, and then that one's probably going to be easier to get from the top. So we're just going to go ahead and get this one pulled out, and then from the top side, you can either mark it from the top or you can mark it from the bottom. This side is the one that's slotted, I believe. Let me look. Yeah, so I marked it from the bottom last time, but to each their own. You'll get this one pulled. We've got everything off of this, so all we gotta do is pull that top one. So we'll go ahead and move up to the top side. All right, so we got this other bolt pulled out. So all we've got really left to do now, and it kind of looks like there's a, like in the picture I can already tell, there looks like there's a lot of crap in here and there's no room. There's a fair amount of room. You can get this out. If this is bothering you, this is just a 10 millimeter holding that in. This is a ground, so you can pop that out if you really want to. I don't really think it's that big of a deal, but we'll go ahead and try not to throw you guys off here. Sorry. Go ahead and wiggle this, and then you're gonna fight this other hose just like that. So let's see if we can get this pulled out the top side. Actually, you know what? We're gonna drop it out the bottom just because it looks like it's gonna be easier. So let's go ahead and make our way down there. All right, so as you can tell, it's just sitting right here. So we'll go ahead and grab it, pop it out like so, and our plug is still plugged in. That is beautiful. I don't know how that got, oh, it's not plugged in, it's caught on something. One second. Please hold. There. What's this one? Okay, this one's just a plug. All right, now it's out. It's caught on this bracket right here. All right, well, let's see what we got going on here. So it looks super gross because it's been leaking for a little while, but this piece right here is gonna pop out. This is gonna be our adapter for the distributor. This O-ring is going to be one on our packet here, and then the other piece, which we may need to grab a rag for so we can get it popped out of there. Once we get that popped out, there'll be another one behind that that needs to be replaced as well. Well, inevitably, this O-ring held in there, but the other one did not. That's beautiful. Come on. All right, so you can see they're flat. I mean, there's no surface at all that is sealing. So we'll get this all cleaned out. You don't really have to be concerned about where your rotor is on this. It'll be just fine. As long as this matches where it goes back in, which there's an indicator in there. It's either going to be, that's either going to work, or it's going to be 180 out. All right, with our piece out, we're going to go ahead and get these O-rings pulled off of here. If this moves at all, when you guys, don't be too concerned. Just make sure it gets put back pretty much in its spot. If you're unsure, the simplest way this is going to go back in, it's either going to be right where it needed to be, or it needs to be spun 180. You'll know that by if it backfires. If you go to fire this thing up and it spits and sputters and backfires, unfortunately you're going to have to pull this thing back out and just spin this 180. So, but you'll be fine. It's not really a big deal to do. Obviously there's 2 bolts. You can pull it away from the block, spin it, put it back in, and tighten your bolts back down. So, but let me grab a pick. We'll get these pulled off. So I happen to have these fancy O-ring tools that I got forever in the day. But you can do this with a pick. It's really not that big of a deal. Just be careful not to, this is aluminum, so you don't want to gouge this. So we'll get both of these spun off of here. We'll get this cleaned up. Make sure our sealing surfaces, we don't have a bunch of garbage in there. So these are already, I can tell, these are probably a little less than a year old, and they're not what they need to be. I don't know if it was because they weren't compatible for oil or what, but they're not what they need to be. So if we look at our gap here, I mean, I can obviously tell one of them is a lot thicker. So if we look here, if I match up the bottom, this one's a lot thicker. Roundness, and this one's just kind of crappy, but all in all, it's not too bad. Pardon my phone ringing. But yeah, definitely much better O-ring. So I'm gonna spray some grease on these when I go to install them, but that's how you just walk them back on. It's not really rocket science. All right, so we got our new O-rings on. I like to just wipe a little bit of grease on here just so they go in decently and they don't bind. You can use all kinds of grease, but I have an abundance of dielectric grease, so I'm just going to throw a good amount on here. From what I can see, there really doesn't matter what side of the coupler goes on, so we're just going to go ahead and pop this right back into our distributor. Actually, no, we're not. I'm gonna wipe this thing down with some brake clean because it looks super grody. I'm not gonna get too carried away because I don't want to spray all the electronics, but just enough where it's not a complete oily mess. The idea was for this thing to be halfway clean on the bottom. I know that's probably a pipe dream. It's like owning a Volkswagen. If they don't leak oil, they're not working. But they also look super nasty and are not fun to work on. stuff has obviously been caked on there for a little bit because it's pretty tough. There we go. All right, that's good enough. It doesn't need to be perfect. All right, now I'm gonna wipe the inside out again. If it spins, it's not that big of a deal. So I'll put it back where it belongs. Actually, that might be our mark right there. There's a mark right here, and there's a mark right there. So that may be our money shot. I just saw that. We'll see if that holds true, or if I just don't know what I'm doing. Probably both. So we'll spin that back where it needs to be. I'll take this, looks clean. We'll pop that in there. And we'll go ahead, pop this in from the bottom. All right, so in the reverse order, we went ahead and put our plugs back on. This is tightened up and placed right where we put our mark on the block. So plug wires, put the coil wire back on, this vacuum line back on. We hooked the vacuum advance back up in this little spot right here. It's kind of hard to see because there's so many vacuum lines. And then the coil, the wire, I don't think I'd mentioned it earlier, but the wire for the distributor itself goes down, and then the coil is mounted on the frame right in there. You can see it perfect on the bottom side. So don't forget to plug that back in. It will not start up. So we're gonna see if we are in the right spot or we are 180 out. So we will go ahead, give it a crank, make sure we're not in gear. I'd say we got it. So, all in all, 30-minute project. Really not that big of a deal. Let me shut this noisy thing off. It does obviously run. It didn't backfire. So, race car, we're ready to rip. It'll obviously idle back down once it gets the temperature would drop back down to cool, so that's a plus. Obviously we were working on it. Yeah, so I went ahead and tightened up the valve cover. Should be good there. That's tightened up. I'm gonna go ahead and let this thing run for a little bit off camera and make sure we don't have any oil leaks. But again, like I said, probably a 30-minute project. Just got to make sure you mark everything and put it back the way it is. Not rocket science. Let me grab these bags for the O-rings. I can tell you guys which ones they are. You can look them up on eBay. It's really not a hard thing to find. But our part number we've got here is a 91305-PN4-003. I ripped both the bags, so I had to use the two. Otherwise, I would have just shown you a picture. Pretty simple fix. If yours is leaking oil and you don't know where it's coming from, it's probably the valve cover or the distributor. Both of them, super easy fixes. Order them online and do them yourself. That's it. That is all. On to the next.